Thank you for joining us today for our Engineering Data Management Best Practice for PCB File Management in OrCAD. My name is Brianna and I will be moderating this event. And to get started, let's address a few logistics. Everyone's mic is muted throughout our time together. If you have any questions, please ask them within the questions pane. We will have a representative answering questions as well as a Q&A at the end. Matthew Harms will be our presenter today. Matthew is an electrical engineer from Canada and has been with EMA as an application engineer since 2003 and as an application engineer team leader since 2018. At EMA, he specializes in design side issues pertaining to part management, circuit simulation, signal integrity, and power integrity, but is conversant in all facets of ECAD design. So with that being said, over to you, Matthew.
All right, thank you, Brianna. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Good morning, and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We're glad to have you with us today. What I wanted to talk to you about today was data management in the OrCAD tool. And I was interested to see that many of you thought synchronizing libraries and designs was the most important item for you. So I'll try and spend time talking about that. And second was tracking revision history. So I'll make sure to spend a little bit of time on those two things. Some issues that people are going to have with data management in OrCAD, aside from the ones that we uncovered there already before, I'll just pull these up right here. But where are my project schematics files? These are some common questions that we get. Who is working on my design and should they be? And that's in regards to file permissions, who's allowed to work on these files, who should just be able to see them, who should be able to edit them, and is there better ways of managing that? And what version or revision should I be working on? And that was one of the poll questions that you guys answered with lots of you saying that was an issue, which is the latest version and which one should I be working on? And what were the changes made in the last revision? This is often a question that comes up, who made those changes and how do I manage that? How do I ensure my design is locked once I send it off to layout? So how do I make sure everything is locked down and not going to change anymore beyond that point? And what projects are currently active across the entire design and who's working on them? So this is generally a management type request that they want to see who's working on what and just some greater visibility into their team. So those are some of the issues that we've seen at EMA from our customers that want to manage their design files a little bit better. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you just how you can start to tackle some of these problems and similar problems to this with the regular capture tool. So we'll talk first a little bit about that, and then I'm going to go in and show you an additional tool that you can get and some of the benefits that it can bring to answer some of these questions that you have here. All right, so let's go into OrCAD, and I have OrCAD pulled up here. If you're not familiar with the latest version of OrCAD, you might be on not 17.4. You'll notice here I'm on 17.4. If you're on an older version, it might not look quite like this. So there's a few graphical changes that are new in 17.4. I'm not going to go over them all that much necessarily, but you'll notice some as I go along here. But if you want to start working on a design file, normally how people are going to do it is they're going to have a directory. And in this directory, they're going to have their latest design files. So maybe it's Rev 1, Rev 2, maybe it's something like that. Maybe you're going to have your dates tied to the design file, or there's lots of possibilities for ways that you can manage these files. Normally also they're going to reside on your company network. That's what we're seeing more of our customers do. They'll put it on a company network. So this, although this is local on my drive here, it might be on your company network, which is good. It's a good practice to put it on your company network. The problems with that might be just network access. Now with lots of people working from home, it might be hard to get those design files. VPN might be kind of sketchy, or your internet might not be consistently available. So there can be some problems with that, but that's what most people are doing, and that's in general a good idea. Naming your files is really up to the user. So it's up to you how you want to name those files to make them understandable for what's in them. And there's not a lot of restrictions necessarily that we're going to place on you for that. Libraries are the same thing. I'm going to put my libraries here as well. So libraries are the OrCAD library files. And these are the same thing, and they have some different problems associated with them compared to design files. And that's that you generally don't want everybody manipulating your company library. So if these are on your network again, you normally don't want every person to have access, write access at least, to these library files. You don't want everybody changing them, most likely. It depends the size of your company and how many engineers you have in your group. If it's just one or two, that might be fine. But if you're 5 or more, then you might not want everybody in there. So how do you restrict that? And then you're normally going to need to talk to IT, and your IT is going to restrict that folder to certain people and give permissions and stuff. But then you still do need read permissions. So it's a little bit complex managing that. And most of the time, people just kind of leave it open and tell people don't make changes to those files, which isn't super secure, but it can work. So we'll talk about how to do that a little bit as well too. All right, so if we want to work on this design, you're just going to open it up in your Capture tool, and if you want to make changes to it, I'm just going to make a change or two to this file, and that's really all I'm going to do. So I'm just going to copy this part, and I'll copy this resistor up here too, just to make a few changes. I don't really need to wire it up because I'm not net listing this or doing anything super important with it, but those are the changes I'll make for now. Note that we can make other changes. So I'm gonna zoom in here, and I'm gonna change this to R1000, just something different. And you can see that that changes there. It also underlines it for you. So just a note about Capture, when it's underlined something, it's thinking that you made a change to that and you really want it to be R1000 because you typed it in manually. So that's why it underlines it, and it indicates for you that you probably really want it to be that value, and it's aware of that. And when you go to annotation, it's not going to rip it up if you have this button checked. So if you have preserve user assigned valid reference, it's not going to change that underlined reference designator. So that's what the underline means, just in case you were wondering. Okay, so there's a couple parts placed in here. A change to a reference designator. You can make more changes if you want to. But now another question that often comes up is, how do you see the differences between these versions? And within Capture itself, you can do that. So we have these two design files. I have Rev1 and Rev2, and Rev2 was a copy of Rev1 until I made those changes. So I'm expecting to see those two components added and one component RefDes changed is what I'm expecting to see. And you can actually do that right within Capture. So right within Capture, again, tools, you can go to compare design, and you can see the differences between these two designs. So I'll grab Rev2, it just pulls up for me automatically. Let's grab Rev1 here as well. I'll just grab that folder and pull it in. And there's Rev1. Okay, so Rev1, Rev2, and we want to compare these two files. All you need to do is hit compare. It's going to show you the differences. So there's 3 component differences right here. There's some flat net differences. And I want to see the details. We'll see the logical differences. And we're going to pull that up. And it's going to pull it up in Chrome for me. In my case, note that you can save this file off and send it to anybody you want to. And they don't need to have Capture to view it. It's going to look pretty much just like this. So here you go. You can kind of click through the differences. On Rev2, this U5 is here. On Rev1, it's not. R5 is here. On Rev1, it's not. And here the reference designator changed. So you had a property difference. It's telling you it's R1 on one of them and R1000 on the other one. So this design compare is part of your Capture tool. So if you have Capture, this even existed in 17.2, so you don't even have to be on the latest version. You can do this design compare. So that's a common question we get asked for finding out what are the differences between different versions. You can do it really nicely within the Capture tool using this design compare utility. All right, so that's taking a look at files. Another thing that people often want to do is if they're working in a group and they want to have more than one engineer work on a page at a time, that's not something that you can easily do with Capture. So for example, if these files here were on the network, once I check out Rev2, which I've done right here, so I've opened it up, that's kind of like checking it out. it puts a DSN LCK file here. And what this lock file does is it prohibits anybody else from opening this file at the same time. So that means if I'm an engineer here working on page 1, nobody else can open up this design and work on page 3, for example, because I've locked it down. Not concurrently, at least. They need to wait for me to save it and close it, and then they can open it up and work on page 3. So doing design work together is a challenge in the Capture environment. What people do to work around that is they'll often just set up a different design. So you can set up a totally new project, and we can say this is page 4, and on page 4 you can start making your own stuff. So engineer B, the second engineer, whoever that is, can be working on page 4 right now, and they can place parts in here if they want to. So if they want to place some parts, they can do that, and they'll just place a cap. So place some caps in there, and that's the design that they're working on. And if they want to add this to the other engineer's design, they can definitely do that. So let's call this page engineer 2 or something like that. Just save it off here and rename this page. And I'm going to call this engineer 2 page. This is going to be page 4. So that's what I'll call it. If you want to bring this across now to the other design, so you want to bring these two designs together, you can just hit copy, Control C on this. So it's just Windows for copy, and then go back to the first design and select the schematic folder and hit Control V for paste. And there you go. Now you have that page 4 in this other design as well too. So that's how people often do team design work. If they want to do concurrent design in a group, they'll send one person off with one group of pages, another person off with another group of pages, and then they'll manually paste them together. So that's one way of doing team design within Capture, just to kind of work around the problem of not being able to open a design file in 2 different places at one time. So that's something that we can do. Notice also for library management. Library management is done relatively the same way. So OLB files can contain a bunch of parts inside of them. And if you open up this OLB file to work on it, so if you're a librarian or a person acting as a librarian to work on these files, you'll notice that it also makes for you an OLB LCK file, meaning that if you have all your libraries in one library file and you're working on one of them, it locks down the whole library so nobody else can be in there at the same time as you. So you need to save your design work and get out of there so that other people can work on it. So that's kind of one issue that people, again, have with Capture. Again, to get around it, you can make multiple libraries. You can split your symbols into multiple libraries. That's fine. You can totally do that. Or you can just make a habit of closing this after you're done it. So a couple of different things that you can do. You can, of course, copy and paste parts into this, just like we did with pages before too. So if someone's had this locked down, you can make your own symbol, send the symbol library, and the librarian can just append it to this master library file. That works as well too. So a couple different techniques that you can use there to work around some library management issues as well. Notice that almost everything I'm saying is true of the board file as well too. So in the board space, you're going to have the same kind of issues, managing your design files, you're going to have managing your library files, and it's all the same kind of stuff. So same kind of problems you're going to bump into. Some small differences in the board space in that your library files are all individual files by default, so you can't have a joint bunch of parts in there. But you can do design work again in teams. It requires some workarounds to make that work, but the same story is pretty much true there. Another thing that people often use to manage your design files, which is again a good idea, is if they're using something like SVN or Git. If you're familiar with those are file management tools, and you can use those to check in and check out as well too. So that's helpful. That helps you certainly keep track of your files a little bit better and store them on the network and give permissions to check in and check out. So using a tool like that is a good idea as well. I don't have that on my system. They're free tools, though. You can use them, and many people do. All right, what I want to do now is I want to transition to a tool that we offer that allows you some assistance in managing some of these files, and it's called EDM. And EDM actually exists right within our capture environment. And what you can do with EDM is you can log in, and based on who you log in as, you can have different privileges and permissions, different things that you can do. So I'm going to log in with my Windows login right here, so it knows who I am logged in on my Windows machine, and that's Matthew, and then it logs me into EDM right here with that login and the permissions that are contained with that login. So I have the ability to see these different projects that I'm working on here. So now finding the project I'm working on is simply click it. You don't need to do any Windows File Explorer stuff here. And finding the latest revision is also really easy. So you can see all the revisions from a drop-down right here. So if you want to go to any old revision, you can. And right now it's going to take me by default to the latest. And if I want to work on that, I can easily do that. So all I need to do is hit checkout on that file that I want to work on, and maybe I want to check out the PDF and the bill materials as well too, just in case I intend on changing those. But if I want to, I can just check them out, and I'm going to hit the checkout button right here in EDM, and it's going to check those files out for me. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull those locally. So these files, again, reside on your network. That's a good idea to have these stored on your corporate network somewhere, but for working on them, it's nice to pull them locally so that I'm not reliant on my VPN connection, on my internet service provider being consistent, having a good connection all the time. That's less and less the case these days. The files are now pulled locally, so if I open them up, I can see that they're right here on my local drive. This is where I've chosen to save them, and they're put right in here. What I can do with them now is I can just hit open, and I can work on them. Before I hit open, though, notice that some of these files are not able to be checked out. So this one now cannot be checked out because Matthew's already checked it out. You can see that here that this person, Matthew in this case, has checked it out. So if somebody else logs in here and tries to check it out, they can see, oh, it's already taken. So you now know who to talk to. For the people that are in larger groups and you don't know necessarily who locked that file down, you can now see very easily that it's Matthew, and you can see when they did it. So if this was a day or two ago, you can say, oh, they probably just forgot to check it in, and you can send them a reminder, please check that file in, I want to start working on it. Let's open this up so we can start working on it, and I'll show you a few things that EDM is going to be able to help you out with as far as your file management is concerned. So here we are in this design again, and let's make some changes to this one again as well. I'm going to copy this part just to save some sort of change in here. You can, of course, do more work, and you would really just spend your day now in here doing design work and whatever you need to do. And ultimately, once you're done, you want to save this back to the EDM system. So I'm just going to save it and close it, and we want to check it back in. So to check it back in, we're just going to hit this check-in button here. And there's some nice automation here. So this is where you get some advantages over a system like SVN or Git, which are good solutions. This one, what it allows you to do is stay within capture the entire time. And it also allows you to do some automation. So it allows you to automatically make your bill materials in your netlist and your PDF file. And it'll go and create those for you and put them right into the database as well. So I'm going to hit check this in. It's going to do some auto commenting for me. It's letting me know that my net list is not being generated, so it's going to be out of sync. That's okay. But here it's going to go off and make the PDF for me. It's going to go make the bill materials for me as well, and check those all at the same time into the EDM system. So it's kind of zipping off and doing some of that stuff. And again, that's really the benefit of having this integrated system where this EDM tool actually understands the content of our DSN file and the content of our OLB file. So it's able to do some neat tricks on our tool, and that's generating our PDF and netlist and bill materials. And we'll see that the results of those are really quite cool. So it's made our PDF, it's made our bill materials, and it's gonna check those all in along with our design file as well too into the EDM system. So what we can do here is we can hit history on this. we can hit history on any file that's here, but I'll hit history on the DSN file. And what we're gonna see is here, this latest one was checked in by me today. And it was the comments I put on there were demo 1. And it says the parts that were added were U5. So you get to now very quickly at a glance see the differences between all these different uploads that you've put in there. The part count is 25 and the net count is 34. And if you want to, you can download any version of this file that you put in here. So every day when you check this in, it's going to put a copy of this file into your system. And if you do want to know more detailed differences, more than just what parts were added or the part count, net count, you can download any version of these and run the design compare that I showed you before. And it'll show you exactly all the differences between any of these versions. So that's pretty neat as well too. So you get to see the history for all of your files, and the PDF is going to be automatically generated. So let's open that guy up. And we can see here's that PDF. Notice this is just a regular PDF tool, and you can click on any part and see all the properties. So this is that intelligent PDF. If you haven't seen this before, this is a capture feature, being able to make that intelligent PDF that you can click on any part and see all the properties of it. So some neat stuff there that you can do. You can also click on any component and it'll snap you right to that component in the PDF. So again, no OrCAD software needed. You can send this to a customer, to a manager, to anybody. They don't need to have our software installed, just the PDF, and their PDF reader is enough. So that's pretty neat. And the bill of materials is really cool as well too. If you're familiar with making bill of materials in Capture, you'll know that there's the tools bill of material way of making bills of materials. Those are pretty simplistic. And then if you get a little bit more complex, there's the CIS bill materials that you can make as well too, and that's pretty neat. This one takes it up even a level from that, allowing you to do all kinds of formatting to the bill materials. So oftentimes we get people asking, how do I make a bill materials that looks like I want it to look? And this is really the answer to that. So you can have it based off a template, and in this template I have our company logo here. We have our address and all the formatting and text styling and text sizing that you exactly want, and then it's going to fill it in with all the new information that we have here. This should be, I believe this is my new part that I copied, so you can see there's U3, U5 right here. So there's actually 2 of those parts in our bill of materials. So this is live generated. It's putting all this information together, making a BOM exactly how we want to, so we don't have to make any modifications to that bill of materials. So that's pretty neat as well. Another thing that you can do in EDM is our team design stuff. So if you want to be working with a team or a group of people on a design, you can do that as well. You can set up your design as a team design, and in that team design you can now just check out individual pages. So this is something that you would otherwise have to do by opening different designs up yourself and then pasting them together manually yourself. What you can do now instead is you can say, I want to check out page 1 and page 2 maybe of this 3-page design. Notice this is a traditional DSN file that EDM has broken up into individual pages that we can now check out individually. So I'm going to say I want to check those 2 pages out right here, and it's going to then check those out, and you'll notice that it's locked down by me right here. Page 3 has remained open, so somebody else can still come and check that out. And you could have, again, many pages in here, and you can have many people working in here, and they can all just check out individual files within this. If you want to work on this, you can, so just hit open, and you'll see the design files here that you have to work on. So here's page 1 and page 2 are going to be available here, and you can see them. So this is page 1, this is page 2. And page 3, you'll notice something a little bit different about this one. First, there's a little padlock on the icon, and second, it says read only blasted across here because I can't edit this page. There's nothing I can really do here. I can't move this part. I can't move any other part. There's no changes I can make to this. This page is locked down, not available for me to change because I can't check it back into the EDM system anyway. So that's a neat way of managing your designs in a group as well too. So if you want to be able to check out individual pages, that's something that you can definitely do, no problem. Notice also that you can do hierarchical designs. So this is a flat design, but if you do have hierarchical based designs, you can even split those in a team as well too. So no difference between flat or hierarchical. All right, next thing I wanted to talk to you about was some library management. So actually managing your library files. And I'd shown you how you can manage your OLB files, and you could work on that OLB file, and that's going to check out, or it's going to lock down that whole OLB file so nobody else can be in it. What you can do with the EDM tool is you can work on your OLB file, and you can just work on one part within that large file at a time, meaning that nobody else gets locked out at the same time as you. So here's all the parts within that OLB file that we're seeing within this EDM project. And if I want to work on them, or if I want to add a new part, I can easily do that. So if I want to add a new part, I can just download everything that I want to take a look at, and I could open it up. Notice when you download, it's not going to check it out. So if someone else comes here and they want to work on this, nothing's really checked out except for this part that I checked out previously, but nothing else is even checked out. So here I am in my library, and if I want to make a new part in here, I can. So let's make a new part. I'll call it demo 1, and it really doesn't matter too much of the details about the part, but I'm just going to draw a very quick part here. Let's make a box just so it looks like something, and we'll put a pin on here as well too. So we'll drop a pin, call it pin 1, and drop that down like that. Okay, so a couple pins are down there, pin 1 and pin 2, that's it. That's my part that I just made in my library file. Now, how do I go about making this available to the rest of the team if I'm the librarian? So this demo 1 part, I want to be available to the team. So I'm gonna close this, I'm gonna save it. And you'll notice if you're a user, so if I'm just an engineer right now, if I go to that library where my libraries are, you'll see that there's no demo 1 part in there. So the demo 1 part is not presently available in my libraries. I can even refresh this and just show you that it's not coming up quite yet. What I need to do is 2 things actually. There's 2 things I need to do. First, I need to check this library file, which is presently actually on my own system. It's just on my C drive. I need to check it into the network. So to do that, I'm going to hit this check-in button, and that's going to see if there's any new files, which there is. Here's demo 1, it's new. And I want to check that in, and I want to call that maybe approved is what I want to call it. And new demo 1 part. So I can put some notes in here if I want to as well, just to say what's happened while I check this part in. So there's my new demo 1 part. I check that in, and you'll see demo 1 now exists in this list here. So it's available in this list, but it has not yet been promoted. So it hasn't been promoted to the real library. So presently it sits in my EDM system, but it's not yet available to my users, and I can just show you what I mean by that. I can refresh this library, and it's still not available here to me in that library. You also notice that in my promoted library right here, this is emulating my network library. This is where that part's going to be promoted to. You can notice the date here is not at all today's date. This is last week. It hasn't been updated yet with new parts. So this is the library that everybody's going to see. If you want to put it up there, you can put it up there by promoting it. So I want to take the parts that are in this design that haven't yet been promoted, like this one right here, and I want to promote it to that library. So I'm going to change the status of this then to promoted, and I'm going to promote that part. And it's going to put it up, and you'll notice right away 2 things. One, my OLB file, the date stamp is going to change on it because it's been updated with new part. And again, this is the library file that everybody at the company sees. And if I go to a design page and I refresh this, I should now see my demo 1 part, which I do see. So there's my demo 1 part that I just made, and that part's now available to everybody at the company so they can all see it. So this gives you a way of controlling who's making changes to your parts and having a process for approving and promoting those parts, making them available to a company website. If there's any changes, if there's some weirdness on your library, you can always go to the history and see, well, what's happened to that part? Maybe a pin moved. I hit the wrong button. Maybe a pin moved. Maybe something happened. You can view the history and see who made those changes. In this case, there's only 1 change, but if there was many, then you'd see them, and you could download any old version you wanted to of this part, just like I did of the design file previously. So a lot of neat stuff there that you can do on this library file. I just want to talk to you a little bit about the board design. So the other thing that you can do is you can manage your board data as well too. So if you have board data, you can manage that, and we understand that, and we can help you with some things in that flow as well too. So if you have a board project, which I do right here, so here's a board design. There's some neat stuff that you can do. So here's this PCB design. I don't even need to check it out, but if I wanted to, I can do something on this file that's pretty unique, and it's called package for release. And what this package for release does is it takes the current board file that's checked in and makes all kinds of packaging information that I might be interested in having. So netlist it's going to make, ODB++, artwork, IPC 356, FabMaster, NC drill, pick and place, NC route, test prep, all kinds of files that you would have to manually make. We can now make it for you automatically. So let's say this is a demo 1 package. But it's now taking this board file that I have and generating all that documentation for me. So it's going off, it's using the board file behind the scenes and doing all kinds of work, generating that content. And then ultimately, it's going to zip it all up and upload it to the EDM system for me and really anybody else that wants to see it. They can all have access to that data. It allows you to make sure that everything is going to be generated accurately and complete for you. So here it is, 521. This is the latest one that I just did. I can open up this zip file and I can see the contents of it, but I'm going to get all my artwork, my drill files, my IPC, ODB++ data, drill data. All that stuff is now generated in this zip file that you can check further into a PLM system if you have one, or just have for your own reference for archiving. So pretty neat things that you can do there with the PCB tool. All right, so that's what I wanted to show you today. I did want to address your top poll question from the beginning, and that was synchronizing libraries with design. So if you want to do some sort of synchronization, if you want to make sure that things are in sync between your schematic and your design, a good way of doing that is using our CIP tool. So CIP within your library management flow here, you can invoke it from Part Manager right here. And for those of you that haven't seen this, this is just a way of synchronizing to make sure that everything is the same. And you can use this update part status here to verify your parts against OLB libraries. And what this is going to do is it's going to check your current design file and make sure that the parts in your design file are using the latest from the OLB file that they originally came from. So if there's been a change to the part, it's going to highlight that for you and tell you the part has changed and you haven't updated it yet. So you can just make sure that that's checked off right there. And then you will be verifying your parts against the original OLB files, and you can run a check and it's going to tell you everything and if it's the same or if it's different. So here I have some difference. I'm gonna hit no to all, and then I'm gonna see what's current and what's not. So here you can see I have some differences on these parts. I think the part here has changed compared to what I last had, because if I turn that verification off and rerun this, I think everything's gonna work. Yeah, so everything's good in that case. So there's some symbol differences for these parts compared to between the database part and what I see in my schematic. So if you want some verification that you have the latest, this is one way of doing it. The other thing you can do is if you want to just kind of blast ahead and really make those changes, you can go into the design cache here and you can just select these parts. You can select them all and you can right mouse button and you can hit update cache. And what that's going to do is it's going to update this. This is the cache right here that I'm looking at. Whenever a part is placed, it's put in the cache, and then the design references the cached part, meaning that if your library makes a change, it's not going to be updated because the cache is what it's looking at, not the library file anymore. But if you want to update the cache with any changes that are in your library file, you can use this update cache technique and update the cache with any changes that are in your library. Now note, this isn't really going to give you any warnings or give you any notifications or ask you if you want to do this part or that part. It's just going to do it. So if you have changes you don't necessarily want in this design, you probably don't want to use this command because it's going to go ahead and just update all those parts with whatever changes are in the library. So do use that command with a bit of caution. On the board side, what you can do for that, that's a little bit more complex. And within the board tool itself, there's no great way that I'm aware of to, within the board tool, say, are the footprints that I'm using the latest version that I have? But if you are using the EDM tool, what you can do is if you're managing your footprint libraries in here, so if you're managing your footprint libraries in EDM, all of your footprints now have versions on them as well too. So we're going to track a version on these things. So this is version 2, and if you ever update that, that can be checked against your board. So you can now check that version between your board and your EDM database right here, and it'll tell you in your board if you're not using the latest version. And if you're not, you can go and update it. So the only way I'm aware of checking your, synchronizing your libraries and your designs at the board level is to manage that with EDM. Otherwise, you need to just check that manually and make sure that everything is in sync. So that was the top poll question. So I did want to address that with a little bit more information. But at this point, I believe I'm finished talking about EDM. So I'm going to turn it back to Brianna.
Thank you, Matthew. And at this time, I would like to open the floor up for the Q&A. So please enter any questions you have into the chat now. And Matthew, our first question is the package for release function customizable or fixed in terms of what it outputs?
So is it customizable for what it outputs is the question as I understand it. So here, if we're back in that project and I go to my design project here and I want to change this package for release to package other things. So this is currently not customizable, but if you have things that you want to see in here that are not in here, we'd love to hear it. And since this tool is developed by EMA, that's something that we can take under consideration and put into the tool if it's something that we think would be useful for a number of our customers. So we'd be happy to hear your opinions of what you think should be in here if you feel we're missing something. We'd love to hear about it.
Thank you. So our next question is the BOM version the same of the design version?
Oh yeah, okay, good question. So on the schematic, and that's something I didn't really mention, but it's a good question, is when I was making this bill of materials, I'm just gonna log out of here and go into the other one. When I was taking a look at the bill of materials for this design, I didn't make a point of this, I really should have, but notice the revision for this is 1.D. And when you go to the BOM here, the BOM that I just made, so this was the one I just made a few minutes ago, if I open that up, I can see in the bill of materials, it should say 1.D. So it's gonna actually pull that from EDM and put it right here into the design. So there is the revision right there, 1.D. If I do change that to 2.0 or 1.E or something else, that will be pushed through to the bill of materials and I'll see it there. You can also push that through, I didn't say this either, but you can also push that through to the title block on your design pages. So if you do uprev this, you can update your title block on your design file. Instead of having to do that by hand, our tool will do that. Good question.
Great, thank you. So does EDM also allow you to set user privileges or permissions on CIS database?
Okay, so I didn't really talk about CIS too much, and that's kind of veering into new territory that we haven't really talked about too much yet here, but I'll dip over there for a second to answer the question. So CIP does have the same type of permission system. For those not familiar with what CIP and CIS are, it's managing your properties. In EDM, we're talking about managing our files. So we've been talking about managing our OLBs, our DSNs, our DRAs, our PSMs, our board files, BOMs or PDFs, all those files. But if you actually want to manage properties on your parts, you're going to do that with a tool like CIS or CIP. And the login here is the same type of thing. So when you log into this tool to manage your CIS database, when you log in here, you're going to have the same type of thing going on. So user roles and permissions. This is similar to the EDM tool where you have different users that have different rules. So users here, you have different rules, different things they're allowed to do and not do. So yeah, when you're managing your part data, you can do that with CIP, and that does have role-based permissions as well. Good question.
Thank you. So do I already have EDM or do I need to pay for it?
Yeah, there you go. There's the question. So EDM, you do need to purchase separately. So unless you purchased it on purpose, you're not going to have it. So EDM does not come with OrCAD Capture by default. So you will need to talk to your salesperson if you'd like to purchase it, and you can get some pricing on that. So just put a note in chat that you'd like pricing on it, and marketing will get that off to your salesperson, and you can get information on how to purchase EDM.
So our next question is, what requirements are there on the server side / vault for EDM? Is it just a shared folder or a network drive?
Yeah, good question. So the requirements for EDM are, I'll tell you what people normally do, and then I'll tell you what the requirements are. Normally, people are going to have a network computer separate from individual machines. This isn't always the case. You can actually tell in my case, I have it installed locally on my own machine. I'm kind of a user of one, so I don't really use the network. But at a traditional company setting, you're going to have a network machine that everybody has access to, and that machine is going to have storage space for the files that go on it. You're going to need to install SQL, so that's a free Microsoft product that you can install. And you have two different ways of managing the files themselves. You can just use default Windows file system if you want to, which is fine, or you can use Subversion. So we can also use Subversion under the hood if you want to as well. So one of those two different file management systems, along with SQL, along with space on a network drive, is what you're going to need to install EDM. And again, we can send you off the design requirements or the system requirements for a product like this if you want to learn more about it.
So at this time, if there aren't any more questions, we'll probably wrap this up. If you did mention that you wanted to know more about pricing and more about EDM, we will be in touch with you about that. And I would like to thank you all again for joining us, and thank you, Matthew.
All right, thank you everybody for attending. Have a great day.